welcome to the interview. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Paloma. I'm a third-year student at McGill with a major in philosophy and 2 minors, one in international development and one in Arabic, just a language.
Can you talk a little bit about your high school background?
Sure. So I come from a French high school in New York. So I grew up in the French educational system, which means that I had mandatory philosophy classes in senior year. All French students in the French educational system in France or abroad in French high schools have mandatory philosophy classes in senior year. So I had that, and I also took an extra specialization in humanities, philosophy, and literature. So I had that introduction to philosophy in high school, which made me want to continue in university.
Can you describe how your program is built?
So, well, there's different concentrations in every program at McGill, mostly. There's a major in philosophy, there's a minor, and there's the honors concentration. I spent 2 years in the major concentration, and now I switched to honors because the perks of being in honors, if you're really into philosophy, is that you get to, or you have to, it's mandatory, write a thesis in your final year. That'll be my next year for me, my 4th year, and I switched because I wanted to write a thesis. I wanted to end my undergrad with kind of a concrete project to turn in. But the honors concentration that I can talk about is made up of that thesis in the final year, and then you have 3 required classes only, apart from the 4th one, which is the honors class, basically 6 credits of just being your supervisor and writing a thesis over 2 semesters. And the major is really just 1 required class, which is deductive logic. It's a pain. Everybody finds it like that, but you have to go through it, and then that's it. The rest you choose your classes, pretty much.
If you can think of any, what are the main topics you explore in philosophy?
It's a pretty varied curriculum. Then again, I wish it were more varied, but I've managed to find some of my interests in certain classes. I'm especially interested in existentialism, phenomenology, mostly existentialism, though there is a class called existentialism, Phil 375, just in case, and there is a class called phenomenology, Phil 474, so there are very specific classes in that sense, but then, you know, the courses are not super extensive. You have certain categories to choose from.
Can you tell us one thing you like and one thing you dislike about your major?
I like the freedom I have in choosing my classes and orienting myself towards the philosophical movements and authors that interest me. I also think that freedom can be badly used. There's some classes that I regret taking. It's just you're very free to choose, and so if you don't have a clear direction, you might get a bit lost. So I suggest coming into McGill, having an idea of what you like and what you don't like. So definitely think it through before.
Can you talk a little bit about your homeworks?
Readings. But I mean, if you're looking to go into philosophy, I'm pretty sure you're into that. So definitely, I'm not the best person to ask because I still have trouble kind of organizing myself in my readings. I think you have to become selective after a point. There's some readings you might miss. Okay, well then focus on the ones that will be the most interesting to you, because those are the ones that you can kind of go more in depth with for essays or projects in exams, and then focus on the ones that will be on exams, all that.
Can you share one piece of advice to a prospective student in your major?
Say, ask yourself questions about why you're in philosophy, and while you're in McGill, what you're going to do with your philosophy major or minor. Ask yourself those questions early on. I know that I took too long to ask myself those questions. I switched to honors in 3rd year, which is doable. So do know that if you do change your mind, because that happens too, you know, you're young and things change, you can change to a program with more credits, like from major to honors or from a minor to major in 3rd year. And have an idea of why you're studying philosophy academically, because do know that, you know, your options with a philosophy degree are limited, but are also quite broad. You can do a lot of things with a philosophy degree.
If you have any, what is the biggest regret you have, like study-wise?
Again, it's not having been serious enough early enough. It kind of ties back to what I said earlier about how I didn't switch earlier into honors. It's also not being serious enough academically in my first year. I know that happens to some people. They get here, it's it's this new environment where they're free, they live alone, the world is their oyster, so they might not be going to class all the time, or I don't know, not being very serious with school because then grades stick on your transcript and they're there to stay. And also then you might regret them because they don't represent your qualities adequately.
Do you find it hard to balance school and your social life?
Honestly, it's doable. We're not at a school where we have class from 8 a.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. So we have a lot of freedom. It can be, as I said earlier, misused, but it can also be a great asset if you do have self-discipline and if you do know how to organize yourself. It's really doable. Because once again, you could have, depending on your schedule every semester, depending if you take 4 classes or 5. I'm currently taking 5, but I still have 2 days where I have only 2 classes. So all that to say that it is really doable to strike that balance in McGill. Just know how to regulate yourself and that equilibrium.
Why did you choose this program and why did you choose McGill?
It was actually McGill first, and then just philosophy appeared as the natural choice for me. I chose McGill. I actually chose McGill for another program, which is now my minor because I got tired of it as a major, and it wasn't for me. It's international development, which is a program that not a lot of universities have. It was too wide-ranging for me, so I ended up switching to it as a minor. But anyways, I came to McGill for that. Also because I like the idea of being in a big university where I could be surrounded by students of all different kinds of disciplines. I didn't want to be limited in like a small liberal arts college because I grew up in New York, so I could have stayed in the US for a different cost. Obviously, that's also a factor. Once I was here, I was in international development as a major for 2 years, and then I switched to as a minor, and philosophy I had as a major as well. And it's really what I prefer to do academically. It's what I think I do best. So I decided to make it, what I now have it as.
Was it hard to adjust to university life and to your classes?
Yes, and that's where I talked about regret in the sense that I didn't adapt quickly enough. And that's a risk, again, of being in a big university where you're kind of left to yourself, and coming from a high school, like all high schools are, where you have, class from morning to night, and then you go home and you do your homework, and you're usually at your parents' house, so you have that structure. So going from that structure to a lack of structure, for me, was a challenge. And I've kind of built discipline since then, but I didn't enter with it. Careful with that, careful with adapting to the lack of structure.
If you can describe it, how is the overall vibe in your classes and do you like it?
The philosophy department is not where I've made the most friends at McGill. I think that's partially cultural because it's something I've noticed. Most people in the philosophy department are, from what I've seen at least, American, Canadian, Chinese as well, or mostly Anglophone. I mean, it's an Anglophone university, but since I have more affinities with Francophone people, that's not where I made the most friends. That's a personal point. But then, broadly speaking, it's a vibe. I mean, some people might come off as a little bit pretentious. That's kind of the image, I guess, that philosophers have in general. But in my experience, I've maybe not been the most invested in the department, but I know there's ways to be invested in it. There's obviously the philosophy department floor at a certain building, Leacock building, where there's a lounge. I don't usually go there, but I know that it's a welcoming space, and you can get involved in different things like the Philosophy Student Association, all that. So there's ways to make friends and know people in philosophy and people that share your vibe. And some people have been very, very nice. It's just I haven't made lasting connections in the department. Maybe that's just because I go to class and I don't really make friends in class. I go and I leave and I take the material and that's it. But no, it's a good vibe. It doesn't feel that competitive people aren't like sharks. Yeah, no bad vibes. It's just personally not been where I've been most social.
And last question, what do you plan on doing after this degree? I mean, you mentioned you were going to go to law school.
The plan is to attend law school. I'm not sure where yet, whether in the US or UK, maybe France, I'm not sure. Yeah, and so philosophy, as I said, is I do it because I really enjoy it in itself, but also because there's actually studies about this in the US, and actually philosophy undergrads are repeatedly shown to do relatively better on that exam than maybe some other people coming from other undergraduate backgrounds. So that's an asset. And yeah, apart from that, I'd like to practice law. I'm still thinking about it in what context. Immigration law is something that interests me, namely. But I know that whatever I do, my background in philosophy academically, but also that I'll kind of pursue throughout my life, because I always say philosophy is more than just a class or a major. It's really outlook on life. It's of questioning everything and not taking anything for granted, broadly speaking. It's really valuable training for sure, academically and personally as well. So I recommend, whether you want to go into law, it's a pipeline that's pretty common, philosophy to law school, or political science to law school likewise.
Okay, well, that's it for the interview, and thank you so much, Paloma.
Thank you.